In a faraway corner of the universe where stars burned like tiny candles against the vast darkness of space, there existed an empire that ruled through fear. The Zorathians were not kind rulers. They were towering, insect-like creatures with sharp claws and glowing eyes that struck terror into anyone who saw them. Their ships, massive and menacing, roamed the galaxy, destroying civilizations that dared to resist. Entire planets fell under their control, their people enslaved or wiped out. The Zorathians believed no one could stand against them. Fear was their weapon, and it worked, until one day something unexpected happened. It all began when a strange signal appeared on the edge of Zorathian territory. At first, the Zorathian commanders ignored it. They thought it might be some old piece of debris floating in space or perhaps a malfunctioning satellite from a conquered world. But then, their sensors picked up something unusual. A sleek, angular warship unlike anything they had ever seen before. It was small compared to their dreadnoughts, but bristling with advanced weapon systems that glowed faintly in the dark vacuum of space. The ship's name was painted boldly across its hull, Eclipse, and though none of the Zorathians knew it yet, this single human warship would change everything. The Zorathians didn't pay much attention at first. Humans? What threat could humans possibly pose? To the Zorathians, humans were weak, fragile, beings who lived on a distant blue planet called Earth. Years ago, the Zorathians had invaded Earth thinking it would be easy to conquer. They razed cities, killed millions, and left behind only ruins. They assumed humanity would crumble under their might. Instead, what happened next surprised even the most hardened Zorathian generals. Humanity fought back, not just physically, but emotionally. The invasion ignited a fire within the survivors, a determination to never let such destruction happen again. From the ashes of Earth rose a new generation of fighters, stronger and more united than ever before. And now, decades later, one of those fighters had come knocking on the Zorathians' doorstep. Captain Elena Voss stood on the bridge of Eclipse, her piercing blue eyes fixed on the tactical display in front of her. She wasn't your typical soldier. Tall and lean, with short-cropped black hair streaked with silver, she carried herself with quiet authority. Her voice was calm but commanding, earning respect from every member of her crew. But beneath her composed exterior lay a burning rage, one fueled by loss and grief. Years earlier, during the Zorathian attack on Earth, she had lost her family. Her home had been reduced to rubble, her loved ones buried beneath it. That pain never left her, but instead of letting it consume her, she turned it into fuel for revenge. Now, as captain of Eclipse, she carried the hopes of humanity on her shoulders. Her mission was simple yet monumental: dismantle the Zorathian Empire piece by piece until they could never harm another being. When Eclipse entered Zorathian space, it did so quietly, almost invisibly. Its experimental cloaking technology allowed it to slip past enemy patrols undetected. For days, Captain Voss and her crew gathered intelligence, studying the movements of Zorathian ships and mapping out potential targets. They knew they couldn't take on the entire empire head-on, not yet anyway. So they decided to start small. Near the border of Zorathian territory lay a minor outpost, little more than a refueling station guarded by 3 patrol ships. It was insignificant in the grand scheme of things, but to Voss, it represented an opportunity. If Eclipse could strike, here and win, it would send a message to the Zorathians and to the rest of the galaxy that resistance was possible. On the day of the attack, tension filled the air aboard Eclipse. The crew moved silently, each person focused on their task. Engineers double-checked the ship's systems while gunners prepared the weapons for combat. Captain Voss stood at the center of it all, her hands clasped tightly behind her back. She didn't say much, but her presence alone reassured everyone. When the moment came, Eclipse decloaked right above the outpost, catching the Zorathian ships completely off guard. Bright beams of energy shot out from Eclipse's cannons, slicing through the enemy vessels like paper. Within minutes, 2 of the patrol ships were nothing more than drifting wreckage. The third tried to flee, but Eclipse's superior speed allowed it to catch up easily. A final blast obliterated the fleeing ship, leaving the outpost defenseless. The destruction of the outpost sent shockwaves through the Zorathian command structure. How could one ship, a human ship no less, destroy 3 of their finest patrol vessels without sustaining any damage? Questions buzzed through their communication channels, panic simmering beneath the surface. For years, the Zorathians had relied on fear to maintain their dominance. No one had dared to challenge them. But now, someone had. Someone brave enough or foolish enough to step into their territory and fight back. The implications were terrifying. If one human ship could do this, what else were they capable of? And worse still, what if other species followed their example? Meanwhile, aboard Eclipse, the mood was triumphant but cautious. The crew cheered briefly after the victory, but Captain Voss quickly reminded them that the battle was far from over. "This is just the beginning," she said, her voice steady and firm. "We've shown them we're not afraid, but we can't afford to get cocky. They'll come for us now, harder and faster than before." Her words sobered the crew, reminding them of the danger ahead. Still, there was a sense of pride among them. They had proven themselves against overwhelming odds, and they knew they could do it again. As news of Eclipse's success spread, whispers of hope began to ripple through the galaxy. Survivors of Zorathian attacks, hidden away on remote worlds, or living as refugees, heard about the lone human ship that had struck back. Some dismissed it as a fluke, a lucky break that wouldn't last. Others, however, saw it as a sign. Maybe, just maybe, the Zorathians weren't invincible after all. In secret corners of conquered territories, people started talking. They shared stories of Eclipse, speculating about its origins, and wondering how many others like it might exist. For the first time in years, the idea of resistance felt real. Back on the bridge of Eclipse, Captain Voss plotted her next move. Destroying the outpost had been satisfying, but it was only a small step toward her ultimate goal. She needed to hit the Zorathians where it hurt, in their resources, their morale, and eventually their leadership. Her tactical display showed several potential targets, each offering a different advantage. There was a mining colony rich in rare metals, critical to building Zorathian warships. There was a research facility developing new weapons technology. And then there was the fortress world itself, the heart of the Empire, protected by layers of shields and countless ships. Attacking any of these places would be risky, but Voss knew that playing it safe wouldn't win the war. She leaned forward, her fingers tracing the glowing lines on the screen. "Let's keep moving," she said. "Finally, there's work to be done." And so, Eclipse slipped back into the shadows, ready to strike again. The Zorathians may have ruled through fear, but Captain Voss and her crew had something stronger on their side: courage. With every passing day, they grew bolder, their actions inspiring others to rise up. The galaxy watched and waited, holding its breath. Would Eclipse succeed in toppling the Empire, or would the Zorathians crush this rebellion before it gained momentum? Only time would tell. But one thing was certain: the era of unchecked tyranny was coming to an end. The destruction of the Zorathian outpost had been a bold opening move, but Captain Elena Voss knew it was only the beginning. The real challenge lay ahead, and she couldn't afford to waste time celebrating their small victory. Eclipse's crew worked tirelessly to repair minor damage sustained during the battle, while sensors scanned for the next target. Voss stood on the bridge, her sharp eyes flicking between the tactical display and the vast expanse of stars outside, the viewport. She felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on her shoulders. Every decision she made could mean life or death, not just for her crew, but for countless others across the galaxy. Her mind raced as she considered their options. The mining colony was tempting. Cutting off the Zorathians' supply of rare metals would cripple their ability to build new ships, but attacking such a heavily guarded location might expose Eclipse too soon. The research facility, on the other hand, offered a chance to steal valuable intelligence and perhaps even turn the Zorathians' own technology against them. Yet it was deep within enemy territory, making it a risky proposition. As much as Voss wanted to strike at the heart of the Empire, the fortress world itself, She knew that would be suicide without weakening the Zorathians first. No, they needed something in between. A target significant enough to hurt the Zorathians but manageable enough to ensure Eclipse's survival. Finally, her gaze settled on a blinking icon near the edge of the screen. It represented a communications relay station, one of many scattered throughout Zorathian space. These stations were vital for maintaining control over the Empire, allowing leaders to issue orders and coordinate fleet movements across vast distances. If Eclipse could take out this particular relay, it would sever the connection between several key regions, leaving the Zorathians scrambling to re-establish communication. It wasn't glamorous, but it was strategic, and exactly the kind of calculated blow Voss excelled at delivering. With the plan set, Eclipse slipped silently through the void, its cloaking device rendering it invisible to enemy sensors. The journey took days, during which the crew prepared meticulously for the mission ahead. Engineers fine-tuned the ship's systems, ensuring every weapon and shield was operating at peak efficiency. Gunners practiced targeting drills, honing their aim for the upcoming fight. Meanwhile, Captain Voss spent hours reviewing data, studying the layout of the relay station and planning every possible contingency. She didn't leave anything to chance. When the moment came to decloak, she wanted Eclipse to strike like lightning, quick, precise, and devastating. As they approached the relay station, the tension aboard Eclipse grew palpable. The station loomed ahead, a hulking structure bristling, with antennas and satellite dishes. Surrounding it were layers of defensive drones and automated turrets, all programmed to annihilate any intruder. To make matters worse, 2 Zorathian patrol ships orbited the area, their glowing engines casting eerie shadows against the metal walls of the station. Voss clenched her fists tightly behind her back, forcing herself to stay calm. This was going to be tricky, but not impossible. "All right, listen up," she said, addressing her crew over the intercom. Her voice was steady, cutting through the nervous energy filling the ship. "We've trained for this. We've planned for this. Now it's time to execute. Stay focused, follow your assignments, and trust each other. Remember why we're here. Let's show the Zorathians what happens when you underestimate humanity." The crew responded with quiet determination. They trusted Voss implicitly, knowing she wouldn't lead them into danger without a solid plan, and her plan was simple, yet ingenious. Instead of engaging the patrol ships directly, Eclipse would use its speed and agility to lure them away from the station. Once the ships were distracted, a team of automated fighters, small unmanned drones equipped with precision weapons, would swarm the defenses and disable the relay. With careful timing, Eclipse could then swoop in, finish off the remaining threats, and destroy the station before reinforcements arrived. When the moment came, Eclipse decloaked just beyond the range of the station's sensors. Bright flashes of energy erupted as the patrol ships detected the intruder and turned to intercept. Voss pushed the throttle forward, sending Eclipse darting through space like a streak of silver. The patrol ships gave chase, their engines roaring, as they tried to keep up. But Eclipse was faster, more maneuverable. Voss led them on a wild chase, weaving through asteroid fields and debris clouds, always staying just out of reach. Back at the relay station, the automated fighters launched from Eclipse's hangar bay, streaming toward their target like angry hornets. The defenders put up a fierce fight, unleashing torrents of laser fire and missile barrages. But the automated fighters were relentless, dodging attacks and striking with pinpoint accuracy. One by one, the turrets fell silent, their barrels melted or shattered. Defensive drones spiraled out of control, their circuits fried by concentrated blasts. By the time Voss looped back around, the path to the relay station was clear. She brought Eclipse in close, unleashing its main cannons in a dazzling display of firepower. Explosions rippled across the station's surface, tearing apart its infrastructure and crippling its ability to function. The patrol ships realized too late what had happened. Turning back toward the station, they found themselves caught in Eclipse's crosshairs. Voss gave the order to fire, and the human warship unleashed everything it had. Plasma bolts and railgun rounds tore through the enemy vessels, reducing them to flaming wrecks. Within minutes, the battle was over. The relay station was destroyed, its once mighty antennas now twisted and broken. Eclipse hovered nearby, its crew catching their breath after the intense engagement. Back on the bridge, Voss allowed herself a brief smile. "Good work, everyone," she said, her voice tinged with pride. "That'll slow them down." But the celebration was short-lived. Destroying the relay was a significant victory, but it also meant the Zorathians would be looking for them, now more than ever. Voss ordered the crew to prepare for immediate departure, knowing they couldn't linger in the area. As Eclipse cloaked once again and vanished into the darkness of space, the captain stared at the wreckage on the view screen. "They'll come for us," she muttered under her breath. "But let them. We're ready." Word of the relay station's destruction spread quickly through Zorathian channels. At first, there was disbelief. How could a single human ship accomplish so much? Surely there must have been a larger fleet hiding somewhere waiting to ambush them. But as reports poured in, confirming that Eclipse had acted alone, panic began to creep into the minds of Zorathian commanders. For years, they had relied on fear to maintain control. Their enemies either surrendered or were crushed. Resistance was unthinkable, or so they thought. Now Eclipse had proven that even the smallest spark of defiance could ignite a firestorm. On the Fortress world, the Zorathian High Council convened in an emergency session. Leaders clashed, shouting accusations and demanding answers. Who was responsible for letting this happen? Why hadn't the patrols stopped Eclipse sooner? Amidst the chaos, one figure remained eerily calm: General Crix, the Empire's most feared military commander. Towering above his peers, his chitinous exoskeleton gleaming under the harsh lights, Crix listened intently as details of the attack unfolded. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and venomous. "This human ship, Eclipse, it mocks us. It challenges our authority. If we do not crush it now, others will see weakness. Others will rise against us." Crix's words struck a chord. The council members nodded grimly, realizing the truth of his statement. Eclipse wasn't just a nuisance, it was a symbol of rebellion. If left unchecked, it could inspire others to join the fight. The Zorathians couldn't allow that to happen. They needed to act decisively, brutally. And so, the council unanimously agreed to place General Crix in charge of hunting down Eclipse. He was given command of the Empire's finest fleet, along with carte blanche to use whatever means necessary to eliminate the threat. Meanwhile, aboard Eclipse, the crew remained unaware of the storm gathering in their wake. After destroying the relay station, they had jumped to a remote sector of space to regroup and refuel. Morale was high, buoyed by their recent success. For the first time in what felt like forever, the crew dared to believe that victory might actually be possible. But Captain Voss refused to let complacency set in. She gathered her senior officers in the briefing room, laying out her concerns. "The Zorathians won't let this slide," she warned. "They'll send their best after us. We need to be ready." Her words carried weight, sobering the group. Lieutenant Marcus Hale, Eclipse's tactical officer, leaned forward, his brow furrowed in thought. "If they send a full fleet, we're outnumbered. Even with our tech, we can't take on that kind of force head-on." Voss nodded, acknowledging the reality of their situation. "Then we don't engage them directly. We hit them where it hurts. Supply lines, reinforcements, morale. Keep them guessing. Make them think twice about coming after us." The plan was risky, but it was all they had. As the meeting broke up, Voss returned to the bridge, staring out at the endless sea of stars. Somewhere out there, General Crix was assembling his forces, preparing to hunt them down. She didn't know when, or where he would strike, but she knew one. The galaxy was vast, but it wasn't infinite. General Crix's fleet moved with precision, sweeping through sectors of space like a storm cloud blotting out the sun. The Zorathian commander was not known for subtlety. His reputation was built on overwhelming force and unrelenting aggression. Yet despite his confidence, Crix couldn't shake the unease gnawing at him. Eclipse had proven itself to be more than just a nuisance. It was cunning, unpredictable, and dangerously effective. Every move he made seemed to fall short of catching the elusive human ship. Frustration simmered beneath his armored exoskeleton as he barked orders to his subordinates, demanding faster scans, tighter patrols, and better coordination. Meanwhile, aboard Eclipse, Captain Elena Voss and her crew were playing a deadly game of cat and mouse. They knew Crix was coming for them, but they didn't know when or where he would strike. What they did know was that they couldn't afford to stay in one place for too long. Using stolen data from the destroyed relay station, Voss mapped out Zorathian supply routes and communication hubs. These were the Empire's lifelines, and hitting them would weaken Crix's grip on the galaxy. But every attack brought increased risk. Each strike drew the net tighter around Eclipse, making escape harder with each passing day. The tension aboard the ship was palpable. Crew members worked tirelessly, their movements sharp and efficient, but fatigue lingered in their eyes. Even Captain Voss, who rarely showed weakness, felt the strain. She spent hours pacing the bridge, staring at the tactical display, searching for any advantage she could exploit. Her mind raced with possibilities. Ambushes, diversions, traps, anything, to buy them time and keep Crix guessing. But deep down she knew it wouldn't be enough forever. Sooner or later, Eclipse would have to face the General directly, and that thought weighed heavily on her. It happened sooner than anyone expected. Eclipse had just completed another raid, this time targeting a convoy carrying vital resources to a Zorathian stronghold. The operation had gone smoothly, thanks to careful planning and precise execution. As the crew celebrated their success, sensors picked up an anomaly, a massive energy signature approaching fast. At first they thought it might be a natural phenomenon, perhaps a collapsing star or a rogue black hole. But then, the readings clarified. It wasn't a cosmic event. It was Crix's fleet. "Red alert!" Voss shouted, her voice cutting through, the celebratory chatter like a knife. "All hands to battle stations." The mood shifted instantly. Smiles vanished, replaced by grim determination. Engineers scrambled to power up the shields, while gunners took their positions at the weapons consoles. On the bridge, Voss stood tall, her hands gripping the railing as she studied the incoming threat. The tactical display lit up with red icons, dozens of them. Crix hadn't come alone. He had brought everything he had: battleships, cruisers, destroyers, and swarms of fighters. Eclipse was outnumbered 10-1. For a moment, panic threatened to creep in. But Voss refused to let it take hold. She turned to her crew, her voice steady and commanding. "We've trained for this. We've prepared for this. Stay sharp, follow your assignments, and trust each other. Remember why we're here. Let's show Crix what happens when you mess with humanity." Her words rallied the crew, snapping them. Out of their initial shock, everyone sprang into action, working together like a well-oiled machine. Eclipse's engines roared to life as Voss plotted a course away from the encroaching fleet. But Crix wasn't about to let them slip away. His ship spread out, forming a wide perimeter designed to trap Eclipse in a pincer movement. Voss saw the trap closing in and made a split-second decision. Instead of fleeing outright, she ordered Eclipse to dive straight toward the heart of the enemy formation. "What are you doing?" Lieutenant Marcus Hale asked, his voice tinged with alarm. "If we go in there, we'll be surrounded." "That's exactly what I want," Voss replied, her eyes locked on the screen. "They think we'll run. Let's give them something else to worry about." As Eclipse hurtled toward the center of the Zorathian fleet, chaos erupted. Enemy ships opened fire, unleashing torrents of laser blasts and missiles. Bright flashes illuminated the darkness of space as explosions rocked nearby vessels. Eclipse's shields absorbed hit after hit, holding firm under the relentless assault. Voss maneuvered the ship with expert precision, weaving between larger vessels and using their bulk as cover. The automated fighters launched from Eclipse's hangar bay, swarming the enemy and creating confusion. The Zorathians struggled to adapt, their formations breaking apart as they tried to counter the unexpected tactics. But Crix wasn't so easily fooled. From the command deck of his flagship, he watched the battle unfold with cold calculation. Eclipse's maneuvers were impressive, but they weren't invincible. Sooner or later its shields would fail, and then it would be vulnerable. With a flick of his clawed hand, he issued new orders. A squadron of elite fighters broke off from the main fleet, heading straight for Eclipse. Their mission was simple: board the human ship and capture its captain alive. Voss saw the fighters closing in and immediately understood their intent. "Brace for boarding parties," she ordered, her voice tight with urgency. "Seal all hatches and prepare for close quarters combat." The crew scrambled to secure the ship, barricading corridors and arming themselves with whatever weapons they could find. Marines stationed near critical areas readied their rifles, while engineers rigged makeshift traps to slow down intruders. Meanwhile, Voss headed to the armory, strapping on body armor and grabbing a plasma rifle. She wasn't going to sit idly by while her crew fought for their lives. The first wave of Zorathian soldiers breached Eclipse's hull, their claws glinting menacingly in the dim emergency lighting. Shouts echoed through the corridors as humans and aliens clashed in brutal hand-to-hand combat. Plasma bolts zipped past, ricocheting off walls and scorching metal surfaces. The air grew thick with smoke and the acrid smell of burnt flesh. Despite being outnumbered, the crew fought fiercely, driven by desperation and sheer willpower. Every inch of the ship became a battleground, every corner a potential death trap. At the heart of the chaos, Captain Voss found herself face-to-face with General Krix himself. The towering Zorathian commander strode confidently down the corridor, his glowing eyes fixed on her. Behind him trailed a group of elite warriors, their weapons trained on the human captain. For a moment, the two leaders locked gazes, predator and prey sizing each other up. "You're brave," Krix growled, his voice dripping with disdain. "But bravery won't save you now." Voss raised her rifle, aiming it squarely at the general's chest. "Maybe not," she said, her voice calm but resolute. "But it'll make you work for it." With that, the final phase of the battle began. Voss fired her weapon, forcing Krix and his guards to take cover. The narrow confines of the corridor amplified every blast, turning the area into a deafening maelstrom of noise and destruction. Voss darted behind a fallen beam, reloading her rifle as plasma bolts whizzed past her head. She knew she couldn't win this fight alone, but she didn't need to. Her crew was counting on her, and she intended to make sure none of them gave up without a fight. Krix advanced steadily, his movements deliberate and methodical. He swung his massive claws, slicing through obstacles with ease. When he reached Voss's position, she rolled to the side, narrowly avoiding a lethal swipe. The two exchanged blows, their weapons clashing in a flurry of sparks. Voss used her agility to dodge Krix's attacks, striking back whenever she saw an opening. Though physically outmatched, she relied on speed and strategy to keep the general at bay. The fight spilled into the next corridor, drawing the attention of nearby crew members. Seeing their captain locked in mortal combat, several Marines rushed to her aid, firing at Krix's guards and forcing them to retreat. Emboldened by the support, Voss pressed her advantage, landing a direct hit on Krix's armor with her rifle. The impact staggered the general, giving her enough time to activate a hidden explosive charge planted earlier by the engineering team. A deafening explosion tore through the corridor, sending Krix crashing to the ground. Breathing heavily, Voss approached the fallen general, her weapon still trained on him. Krix groaned, struggling to rise, but his injuries were severe. He looked up at her, his glowing eyes dimmed with pain and disbelief. "You cannot win," he rasped, his voice barely audible. "We already have," Voss replied, her tone icy. "Your empire is crumbling, Krix, and you can't stop us." With that, she delivered the final blow, ending the general's reign of terror once and for all. As Krix's body slumped lifeless to the floor, cheers erupted throughout Eclipse. The crew had done the impossible. They had defeated the most feared commander in the Zorathian Empire. But Voss knew the war wasn't over yet. Destroying Krix was a major victory, but the Empire still stood. As she returned to the bridge, her mind was already racing with plans for the next step. The galaxy was watching, and Eclipse had shown them that resistance was possible. Now it was time to turn that spark of hope into a roaring flame. The death of General Krix sent shockwaves through the Zorathian Empire. News of his defeat spread like wildfire, not only among the Zorathians but also across the galaxy. For decades, Crix had been a symbol of the Empire's invincibility, a ruthless enforcer whose very name struck fear into the hearts of enemies. His loss was a blow that shattered morale within the ranks of the Zorathian military. Soldiers whispered nervously about Eclipse, wondering how a single human ship could achieve what entire fleets had failed to do. Questions lingered in the air. Was this truly the end of their dominance? Could they recover from such a humiliating defeat? For Captain Elena Voss and her crew aboard Eclipse, however, there was no time to rest. Crix might have been dead, but the Empire still stood strong. The victory over him was significant, but it wasn't enough to dismantle the Zorathians' vast network of control. As the ship drifted silently in the aftermath of the battle, Voss gathered her senior officers in the briefing room. Holographic maps floated above the table, showing key locations across Zorathian territory. Her voice carried both authority and urgency as she addressed her team. "We've dealt them a heavy blow," she began, pacing slowly around the table. "But an empire doesn't fall because one leader is gone. They'll regroup. They'll send someone else after us. Someone just as dangerous as Crix. Our job now is to keep hitting them where it hurts before they can recover." Lieutenant Marcus Hale nodded grimly. "They're already weak. If we hit their core systems, the ones closest to their fortress world, it'll break their grip even further." Voss agreed. The fortress world itself was impenetrable for now, guarded by layers of shields and countless ships. But the surrounding systems were vital to maintaining the Empire's stability. Supply depots, communication hubs, and manufacturing plants dotted these regions, feeding resources into the heart of the Empire. By targeting these areas, Eclipse could cripple the Zorathians' ability to wage war and inspire others to rise up against them. The plan was risky. Each mission would bring Eclipse deeper into enemy territory, closer to the fortress world, and directly into the sights of whatever forces remained loyal to the Empire. But Voss knew they couldn't afford to play it safe anymore. Every day they delayed gave the Zorathians more time to rebuild and retaliate. With renewed determination, Eclipse set course for its next target, a massive supply depot orbiting a barren moon. When Eclipse arrived at the supply depot, the scene was eerily quiet. Rows of cargo ships floated in formation, unloading crates, filled with weapons, fuel cells, and raw materials. Automated turrets scanned the area lazily, their operators clearly unprepared for an attack. Voss allowed herself a small smile. This was going to be easier than she thought. Using cloaking technology, Eclipse slipped past the outer defenses undetected. Once inside the perimeter, the ship decloaked and unleashed its full arsenal. Plasma cannons roared to life, tearing through the cargo ships and igniting explosions that lit up the dark expanse of space. Automated fighters swarmed out of Eclipse's hangar bay, overwhelming the turrets and disabling the station's power grid. Within minutes, the once bustling depot was reduced to a field of drifting wreckage. But the real impact came when word of the attack reached nearby planets. These worlds, long oppressed under Zorathian rule, saw the destruction of the supply depot as a sign of hope. Resistance movements that had lain dormant for years suddenly sprang back to life. Rebels armed themselves with whatever weapons they could find and began sabotaging Zorathian operations in their own territories. Factories producing warships went dark as workers staged strikes. Entire colonies declared independence, refusing to acknowledge the Empire's authority any longer. Captain Voss capitalized on this growing unrest by broadcasting messages of defiance across the galaxy. Using hacked Zorathian communication channels, she delivered speeches that resonated with those yearning for freedom. "You are not alone," she declared, her voice firm yet compassionate. "We are fighting for you, and we will not stop until every last chain is broken. Stand with us, and together, we will reclaim our future." Her words ignited a firestorm of rebellion. Survivors of past atrocities joined forces with local insurgents, forming alliances that stretched across star systems. Even some disillusioned Zorathian soldiers defected, disgusted by the cruelty of their leaders and inspired by Eclipse's example. What started as isolated acts of resistance quickly grew into coordinated uprisings that threatened to topple the Empire entirely. Back aboard Eclipse, the crew worked tirelessly to support the growing movement. They smuggled supplies to rebel groups, provided intelligence on Zorathian troop movements, and conducted surgical strikes to weaken the Empire's infrastructure. Morale aboard the ship soared as reports of successful rebellions poured in. For HFY, the first time since setting out on their mission, the crew felt they were truly making a difference. Not just for humanity, but for all beings enslaved by the Zorathians. Yet, despite the progress, Voss remained cautious. The Empire was wounded but far from defeated. Its leaders, desperate to maintain control, launched brutal counterattacks against the rebels. Entire cities were razed, populations massacred in an attempt to quell dissent. Voss watched the horrors unfold on her tactical display, her jaw tightening with anger. She couldn't save everyone, but she vowed to do everything in her power to protect those who dared to fight back. One particularly harrowing incident occurred when Eclipse intercepted a distress signal from a planet called Lyria 7. The message was garbled, but Voss managed to piece together the details. A group of rebels had seized control of a Zorathian munitions factory, hoping to use its resources to arm their people. Unfortunately, reinforcements had arrived sooner than expected, trapping the rebels inside. Without help, they would be slaughtered. Set course for Lyria 7, Voss ordered without hesitation. Full speed. The journey took hours, during which the crew prepared for a high-stakes rescue operation. When Eclipse arrived, the situation was dire. Hundreds of rebels huddled inside the factory, surrounded by Zorathian ground forces and aerial bombardments. Voss wasted no time. Ordering her automated fighters to engage the enemy ships, she piloted Eclipse into a daring descent toward the surface. The ship hovered low, deploying drop pods containing Marines and medical supplies. What followed was a chaotic firefight. Marines stormed the battlefield, providing cover for the trapped rebels while engineers worked to disable the factory's security systems. Voss herself led a squad into the fray, her plasma rifle blazing as she carved a path through Zorathian lines. Despite being outnumbered, the combined efforts of Eclipse and the rebels turned the tide. By the time the last pod lifted off carrying survivors to safety, the factory lay in ruins, and the Zorathians had suffered another humiliating defeat. As Eclipse returned to the stars, cheers erupted throughout the ship. The rescue mission had been a success, but Voss refused to celebrate. Instead, she gathered her crew for a sobering debrief. "Today we saved lives," she said, her voice tinged with emotion. "But tomorrow, someone else will need saving. There are still billions living under the shadow of tyranny. We can't stop until every one of them is free." Her words echoed in the minds of the crew as Eclipse charted a course toward its next destination. The galaxy was changing, shifting beneath the weight of rebellion. The Zorathian Empire, once an unshakable monolith, now teetered on the brink of collapse. And at the center of it all stood Eclipse, a lone human warship that refused to bow to fear. But the final battle loomed ahead. The fortress world awaited, its shields gleaming defiantly against the backdrop of space. To destroy it would mean the end of the Empire, but it would also require a sacrifice greater than anything Eclipse had faced before. As Voss stared at the glowing icon on her tactical display, she felt the weight of history pressing down on her shoulders. The galaxy was counting on her. Failure was not an option. The fortress world loomed ahead, a monolithic structure suspended in the void of space. Its surface shimmered with layers of energy shields so dense they distorted light itself, creating an eerie halo effect around the planet-sized stronghold. Towering spires jutted out from its metallic crust, bristling with weapons platforms and docking bays for thousands of warships. It was the heart of the Zorathian Empire, the seat of their power, and the final obstacle standing between Captain Elena Voss and the liberation of the galaxy. Eclipse drifted silently on the edge of sensor range, cloaked and ready. Inside, the crew prepared for what would likely be their most dangerous mission yet. Every member knew the stakes. This wasn't just about destroying the fortress world. It was about ending decades of tyranny and freeing countless beings who had suffered under the Zorathians' brutal rule. For many aboard Eclipse, the thought of failure was unbearable. Yet, despite the overwhelming odds, there was no hesitation. They trusted Captain Voss implicitly, knowing she wouldn't lead them into battle without a plan. Voss stood on the bridge, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. She had spent days studying every detail of the fortress world's defenses, poring over stolen intelligence and analyzing weak points. The shields were the biggest challenge. They were impenetrable unless disabled from within. But even getting close enough to attempt such a feat seemed impossible. Surrounding the fortress world was a swarm of enemy ships, each one capable of obliterating Eclipse if given the chance. Still, Voss refused to let doubt creep in. "We've come too far to turn back now," she told herself under her breath. Her strategy was bold, risky, and utterly necessary. Using decoy ships, small, unmanned drones equipped with fake reactor signatures, she intended to draw the attention of the Zorathian fleet away from key locations. While the enemy scrambled to intercept these false targets, strike teams would infiltrate the fortress world via hidden access points buried beneath its surface. Once inside, they would disable the shield generators, leaving the stronghold vulnerable to attack. It was a multi-step operation requiring perfect timing, coordination, and sheer guts. Failure at any point meant disaster. As the moment approached, tension gripped the ship. Engineers double-checked every system, while gunners ran simulations to ensure their aim was flawless. Marines reviewed plans for ground combat, rehearsing tactics until their movements became second nature. On the bridge, Lieutenant Marcus Hale leaned over the navigation console, his brow furrowed in concentration. "All decoys are in position," he reported, glancing up at Voss. "Ready when you are." Voss nodded, her expression calm but resolute. "Execute Phase 1. At her command, the decoys activated their engines, streaking toward the fortress world like comets. Bright flashes erupted as Zorathian patrols detected the intruders and moved to engage. Within moments, the skies above the fortress world lit up with explosions as automated turrets opened fire. Enemy ships broke formation, chasing after the decoys with reckless abandon. Meanwhile, Eclipse slipped through the chaos undetected, its cloaking device rendering it invisible to sensors. When the time came, Eclipse decloaked near a massive canyon carved into the fortress world's surface, hidden beneath layers of artificial terrain. This area housed critical infrastructure, including the shield generator complexes. Voss piloted the ship into the narrow passage, navigating carefully to avoid detection. The walls of the canyon glowed faintly with residual energy, casting strange shadows across the viewport. As they descended deeper, the hum of Eclipse's engines grew quieter, replaced by the ominous silence of anticipation. "Strike teams, prepare for deployment," Voss ordered, her voice cutting through the quiet. Marines suited up quickly, checking their weapons and securing oxygen tanks. Each team carried specialized equipment designed to sabotage the shield generators. Leading one of these teams was Sergeant Darius Cole, a grizzled veteran known for his unshakable resolve. He exchanged a brief nod with Voss before stepping onto the loading ramp. "Good luck out there," she said, her tone soft but firm. "Make it count." As the strike teams disembarked, Eclipse remained in position, providing cover fire whenever enemy patrols ventured too close. Below, the Marines moved swiftly through darkened tunnels guided by glowing markers on their helmets. The air was thick with dust and static electricity, making every step feel heavier than the last. Despite the oppressive atmosphere, the teams pressed on, driven by the knowledge that their success depended entirely on speed and precision. The first generator complex lay ahead, guarded by automated sentries and reinforced doors. The Marines deployed EMP grenades, disabling the sentries long enough to breach the entrance. Inside, they found rows of pulsating conduits feeding power to the shield grid. Working quickly, they planted explosives at key junctions, setting timers to detonate simultaneously. Just as they finished, alarms blared throughout the facility, signaling that their presence had been discovered. "Move fast," Cole shouted, urging his team toward the exit. Behind them, Zorathian soldiers poured into the chamber, firing wildly. Plasma bolts ricocheted off walls, filling the air with sparks and smoke. The Marines returned fire, their movements sharp and coordinated. Though outnumbered, they fought with ferocity born of desperation. Step by step they retreated, covering each other until they reached the extraction point. Back aboard Eclipse, Voss monitored the situation closely. When the explosives detonated, the first shield layer collapsed, sending shockwaves rippling across the fortress world's surface. Cheers erupted on the bridge, but Voss silenced them with a raised hand. "We're not done yet," she reminded everyone. Phase 2 is underway. With part of the shields down, Eclipse led a coalition of rebel ships into the fray. These vessels, once scattered across the galaxy, had united under Eclipse's banner, answering Voss's call to arms. Together they formed a ragtag armada, determined to see the fight through to the end. As the fleet advanced, Eclipse spearheaded the assault, targeting remaining defense systems and clearing a path for the ground forces. Inside the fortress world, the strike teams faced increasing resistance. Zorathian elites dispatched directly by the High Council hunted them relentlessly. In one particularly harrowing encounter, Cole's team found themselves cornered in a narrow corridor. Outnumbered and low on ammunition, they seemed doomed. But then Eclipse intervened. Its railguns tore through the ceiling above, collapsing debris onto the enemy forces and giving the Marines a chance to escape. "Thanks, Captain," Cole muttered into his comm link, his voice tinged with gratitude. Finally, after hours of relentless fighting, the last shield generator fell silent. The fortress world was exposed, its defenses stripped bare. Eclipse wasted no time, unleashing everything it had left. Plasma cannons roared to life, carving fiery scars across the metallic surface. Rebel ships joined in, their combined firepower overwhelming the remaining Zorathian forces. Explosions rippled outward, consuming spires and weapon platforms alike. From orbit, the fortress world looked like a dying star, its glow fading as internal systems failed. Amidst the chaos, Voss received a transmission from the High Council chamber. A lone Zorathian leader appeared on the screen, his chitinous exoskeleton cracked and scorched. "You think this ends here?" he snarled, his voice trembling with rage. "Even if you destroy us, others will rise to take our place." Voss stared at him coldly, her finger hovering over the trigger. "Maybe," she replied, "but they'll know better than to rule through fear." With that, she fired, obliterating the chamber and the Empire's leadership with a single shot. Silence fell across the battlefield as the realization sank in. The Zorathian Empire was no more. In the days that followed, the galaxy began to heal. Freed worlds celebrated their newfound independence, raising monuments to honor those who had fought for freedom. Survivors of past atrocities reunited with loved ones, tears streaming down their faces as they embraced. Even former Zorathian soldiers, disillusioned by their leaders' cruelty, sought redemption by helping rebuild shattered communities. Humanity, once dismissed as weak and insignificant, earned respect as a force to be reckoned with. Captain Voss returned to Earth, a hero though she shunned the accolades. To her, the victory was bittersweet. It couldn't bring back those lost to the Zorathians' brutality. Still, she took solace in knowing that humanity had proven its resilience. Eclipse itself was retired, enshrined as a symbol of hope and defiance. Visitors came from across the galaxy to pay their respects, marveling at the small ship that had changed history. As Voss gazed at the stars one final time, she felt a flicker of uncertainty. Somewhere out there, new threats might lurk, waiting for their chance to rise. But for now, the galaxy enjoyed a fragile harmony, united by the memory of one human warship that refused to bow to fear. And perhaps that was enough.